Over just the last 24 hours, it feels like the whole world has been holding its breath. A conflict that's been simmering for decades has finally, spectacularly boiled over. The Middle East is on fire, and the geopolitical map as we know it might have just been redrawn forever.
So let's just jump right in, straight to the absolute biggest development in this crisis. A confirmation that has sent shockwaves from Washington to Tehran and literally every capital in between.
And there it is. This isn't just speculation, not some rumor. This is coming directly from Iran's own state-run media. The man who has ruled Iran with an iron fist for more than 30 years is dead. And it didn't take long for a claim of responsibility to surface. Almost immediately, really. In a social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump didn't frame this as an act of war, but as an act of liberation, an act of justice for the world.
I mean, how on earth did we get here? A decapitation strike on a sovereign nation's leader. That is a massive, massive escalation. So the question we have to ask is, what series of events led us to this point? All right, so let's get into the specifics of this campaign. It's been dubbed Operation Epic Fury, and that name, well, it really tells you everything you need to know about the sheer scale and ambition here.
And you really have to understand, this is not just a repeat of past skirmishes. I mean, if you look at last year's 12-day war, the goals were pretty limited, right? Degrade Iran's military, knock back their nuclear program a bit. But this time, the goals are, well, maximal. U.S. and Israeli leaders are saying they're not just trying to stop a nuclear Iran, they want to completely destroy its missile industry, annihilate its navy, and, get this, pave the way for the Iranian people to take over your government. I mean, we've gone from containment to outright regime change. That's a huge shift.
So, to pull off goals that big, you need something special. And that's exactly what we saw, a military operation on a scale the region really hasn't witnessed in decades.
This map really paints the picture, doesn't it? It's like looking at the chessboard right before the first move. Just look at all those assets. For weeks, the U.S. was quietly building up this incredible firepower. You see the naval power there in the Persian Gulf? That's two full aircraft carrier strike groups, plus destroyers, submarines, all moving into position for what was about to happen.
And then the storm hit. Israel made the opening move, and reports are saying the first wave involved around 200 of their combat aircraft.
And those 200 jets, in what's already being called the largest operation in the history of the Israeli Air Force, hit something like 500 different targets inside Iran, all in just the first few hours.
Then the U.S. jumped in, and they brought the kind of firepower that, honestly, no one else has. We're talking long-range Tomahawk missiles fired from ships and subs, jets from those carriers providing air cover and jamming enemy systems, and for the very first time, they sent F-22 Raptors, America's best stealth fighter, to Israel. That alone is a massive signal. And they even mixed in these new low-cost attack drones. So it's this combination of raw power and next-gen tech.
But here's the most critical part, okay? This wasn't just about blowing up bunkers or missile silos. No. The intelligence they must have had, it's incredible. This was a precision strike, aimed at taking out the entire leadership. The goal was to eliminate 30 of Iran's top officials in one shot, with the ultimate target, of course, being Ayatollah Khamenei himself. You might think that would be the end of it, right? But Iran didn't just crumble. Instead, with their backs against the wall, it looks like their response is to try and pull the entire region down with them.
And this chart is really fascinating because it shows you Iran's strategy. They're not just firing one big volley of missiles and calling it a day. Look at this. It's a sustained campaign, at least 26 separate waves of attacks, all spread out over time and hitting targets all across the region. The idea is pretty clear. They're trying to overwhelm and just completely exhaust the air defenses.
And just look at where they're aiming. This tells you everything about their goal to make this a bigger war. It's not just Israel. They're hitting the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, major American air bases in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, plus targets in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. This isn't a two-sided fight anymore. It's a full-blown regional firestorm.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the rest of the world? Let's talk about the immediate fallout because this has plunged us into a global crisis.
So you can imagine, the UN Security Council scrambled for an emergency meeting, and the two sides couldn't be further apart. The U.S. and Israel are defending the strike, calling it a legitimate action to stop a nuclear Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's ambassador is firing back, calling it a clear act of aggression that violates international law. And the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, basically voiced what everyone is thinking, warning that this is a grave threat that could lead to an uncontrollable chain reaction. He's pleading for a ceasefire before this whole thing spirals completely out of control. And here's why this affects every single one of us, no matter where we live: the economy. The markets are already in a total panic. Analysts are calling it ultimate risk aversion. That means investors are just dumping risky assets and running for safety, like the Japanese yen. Oil prices, they're spiking, especially with Iran threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is a vital choke point for global energy. Basically, get ready for an absolutely insane week. They're calling it a jet coaster ride for the world economy.
So, this is where we are. A leader of a nation is dead, an entire region is on fire, global markets are in turmoil. For decades, this was a shadow war, right? Fought in the dark. Well, now it has exploded out into the open. And it leaves us with one single terrifying question that nobody has the answer to. Is this the end of a conflict, or is it just the beginning of a much, much larger one?